So at 7 p.m. we'll call the meeting to order. This is the regular meeting of the Council of the Municipality of Swan Valley West, held in Council Chambers at 216 Main Street West, Swan River, Manitoba, this 27th day of February 2024 at 7 p.m. Present this evening, myself, Reeve, Gade, Councillors Burick, Blosha, Kushniryk, and Neely. Our Interim CAO, Pat Ellingson, is here, and our videographer, Jeremy Bergen, is here. We will head to 1.2 on the agenda. Be it resolved that the notices of absence submitted by Councillor Zbirun and Councillor McGregor regarding the regular meeting of Council held this 27th day of February 2024 shall be accepted as received. Is there a mover? Councillor Burick and Councillor Neely. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. Those in favour? That is carried. Number 2. Be it resolved that the agenda for the regular meeting of Council held this 27th day of February 2024 shall be adopted as presented. Is there a mover? Councillor Blosha, someone to second the resolution. Councillor Kushniryk. Is there any changes or additions anyone wishes to suggest for the agenda tonight?
Are we going in camera?
We are.
Okay.
It's way down the list there, right?
We have library, HR, and bylaw enforcement.
HR, okay.
Is there anything else you want to add to that?
No.
That's good. Okay. Anybody else? Hearing nothing, we'll call the question. Those in favour? That too is carried. Number 3 we go. Be it resolved that the minutes of the regular council meeting held on Tuesday, February 13th, 2024 be adopted as presented. Is there a mover? Councillor Neely, someone to second the resolution? Councillor Blosha. Copy of the minutes is attached to the agenda. Has everybody had enough time to look at those? Anybody need more time?
No.
Any errors or omissions to note tonight? Hearing none, we'll call the question. Those in favour? That's carried. Number 4, Public Works report. We don't have a written report tonight. As you can imagine, they've been a little busy, and Scott has also been called away. So that's why there's no written report. I can, however, provide some updates on the grading. Snow plowing has been working well today. We were yesterday, but we were getting further behind than we were ahead with the blowing snow, but that's slowed down now overnight. So today we made progress in most areas. Many of the roads are done. We should be able to have the buses run tomorrow. That shouldn't be an issue. There's still a few spots, but some of them are really bad. Like there were places with 4-foot high drifts on the roads just because of the blowing so hard and that snow being so loose and nothing to hold it back. So certainly there's been some challenges, but
Nothing in the field that's on our roads.
absolutely. So we did have one of our operators started a little before 4 a.m. this morning. So that's to be commended that they were out so early, making sure those roads were ready to go where they could. And we were working fairly late into the day. Our goal was to work a little later, but then life happened and we lost one machine to a mechanical issue and we lost another machine to a deep ditch. So we had them to stop work and remove that machine. So it's removed and they're all back in the stables for the night, getting the snow and get ready to go. We ran all 5 today, so we'll run 4 tomorrow. I don't know, it's a hydraulic hose on the one machine that went bad today. It looks like it might be in a difficult to replace position, so we'll see where that goes. If we can fix that tomorrow, it might be the next day before we get it fixed, but we will still have 4 machines tomorrow, so we should be in okay shape that way. Anybody have questions on public works stuff? I know it's mostly just snow tonight, but that's where our attention has been the last couple of days. We'll move to general business. This evening we find there isn't any. So we'll move into financial item 6.1, the general checks. Be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of Swan Valley West hereby approves the following payments. General checks number 19541 to 19559, in the amount of $51,395.28. Is there a mover? Councillor Burick and then Councillor Kushniryk. List of checks is attached to the agenda. I also have them here for the actual invoices if anyone has questions. Councillor, well, let's start with Councillor.
Yeah, you go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just
Go
the
ahead.
co-op for fuel and stuff, does that seem rather high or?
Can you remind me the number of the check?
Oh, I'm sorry.
19555. The same question.
Same question?
Same question.
Oh,
Let's take,
Because January 23rd meeting, it was only 3,000.
yeah.
840.
I looked at back there too and I think of it.
so I have
Well,
the
the tanks are
invoice.
empty maybe.
So we had the 4th of January, $3,000, 12th of January, $3,500, 17th of January, $2,000, And then the 31st of January, 3286. Adding this up and making, yeah, 13,000. Oh, that's so much, but
Another 102 ones with those invoices on, so I don't know.
Unless there was some carryover, like Brian said, and they filled the tanks in Durban for us, I'm thinking, right? So, I don't know, it just looks like a big figure to me.
Well, it's written as all Durban though.
so
It's written all as Durban. Durban,
Yeah,
Durban, Durban,
yeah.
Durban, that's another
Yeah,
thing.
one's one river there, 600
Can't
bucks
have all
hydraulic
that.
oil, so.
Well, we don't have a tank anymore, do we?
no.
The one was right in early January, right?
Yeah, the one
Well, the other one was
the next
January
one's the 31st. But it doesn't seem
Like
to
the
be-
last time we paid for
Yeah, but if this one here was essentially December, right?
Yeah.
But it just happened to just,
Yeah,
so that kinda takes you to,
That's what
9
I'm
and 6 or
wondering,
whatever,
there's
right?
some carryover, or there's maybe a combination of a carryover from the previous month plus a fill-up or something, you know, I
Yeah.
don't know. It just looks rather large.
The 24th.
this is the 31st, 12th, 17th, and 4th. I just wonder how we'd go for the 12th, 17th.
and you've got the 31st on there?
Yeah,
So you've got the 4th and the 31st, you've got two that are,
But the ones in between go the 12th and the 17th, he said.
yeah, I don't know what
That's
dates
too
we would have
soon.
been out.
$12,000 of it is diesel for sure.
Yeah, most of it is diesel.
11.5.
so all I can advise, I'm afraid, one of them has Durban written on it, but the other three don't. We can certainly have Public Works make sure they actually took that many deliveries.
I'm just,
Just to make
we
sure.
didn't
It's a
have
lot
much.
of, it's a lot.
We didn't have much snow or
in
nothing
one
either,
month.
you know, not like they're going all
I
day
know.
and night and weekends and everything else, so it's like,
Okay, so we'll get them to check it,
Okay.
just to make sure that it shows location 916. Yeah, they're all marked here. 916 is apparently Durban, and they're all marked as that's where they went.
yeah, it's all Durban. It's the first four on the list there, or the
Yeah.
diesel part anyway.
Okay, well, we'll get it checked.
Yeah,
If there's something wrong,
Yeah.
it could just be like Councillor Kushniryk says, it might just be that timing.
that's what I'm thinking, maybe a carryover and plus a big dump, you know, who knows?
Any other checks with questions? Hearing none, we'll call the question on the resolution. Those in favor? That's carried. 6.2 payroll checks. Be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of Swan Valley West hereby approves the following payments. Payroll payments number 318332 for a total of $23,134.01. Is there a mover? Councillor Blosha, someone to second the resolution. Councillor Neely. Copy is attached for council's eyes only. You'll notice there's some red writing on there. And so what has happened is the entry that is circled on page 3, that's entry number 114, you'll notice the rate of pay was incorrect. It's been a trouble they've had a couple times with payment where sometimes it changes for some reason. So the original process batch was for the wrong amount. So there's a secondary sheet at the far end of this that has the correct amount of pay, and that's why there's red writing on that front summary sheet showing what the extra was that was added on there to make sure you got paid the right amount. So that explains that part. Any other questions?
Or just the difference in the hours and some, on the operators, but I guess, I don't know, maybe some of them go like
There's one that-
8 or 10 hours difference. isn't it?
Yeah, and there's one that tends to take a couple days off every pay period too, which is always a little
Oh,
lower.
okay. So what are they supposed to work now in the winter?
Supposed to work 9 hours a day.
45 hours a week. Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, okay. Well. And then there's one there, extra 9 hours, but that might be for, I don't know.
I have one question.
Sure.
What's the overtime for?
Which one? There's the number. on
Page
each one.
two, the top one.
Page 2, the top one is like 106.
Yeah.
15 hours,
So they have banked overtime and when then they request payout of it?
okay. So banked overtime is what I'm told.
So when would he bank, what we paid banked overtime last month, I think.
I suspect we didn't use it all last time.
And some of this maybe go back to the fire hydrant issue in Benita.
Could be.
Yeah, some of it would be there.
We can get more details, but I don't have them in front of me right now to share them. But we can go back to timesheets and see exactly when it was. Any other questions?
I think that's enough.
We'll call the question on the resolution. Those in favor? That's carried. 6.3, council's favorite item. Be resolved that the council of the Municipality of Swan Valley West hereby approves the following payments: indemnities for January number 4559 to 4567, amount $12,491.36. Is there someone who cares to move the resolution? Councillor Kushniryk, and someone to second as well, please. We'll take-
Aye, give it to Carrie.
Don't all fight over it. Councillor Blosha, a second. Copy of the indemnities are attached to the public agenda, so everyone can take a peek if they want. Does anyone have questions or discussion on these? Hearing nothing, we'll call the question on the resolution. Those in favor? That too is carried. 6.4, budget 2024. So there's several attachments here. 2 of them only council can see, the rest are available for everyone. So I want to start with actually the bottom, the 2023 income expense trial balances. And if you forgive me, I have mine on paper because my screen shows it much smaller than yours does as I run the meeting. So this is a trial balance. This is by no means finished. We do know some issues in this. So one of the biggest issues is the insurance that we pay is not currently showing in this. So there's about $102,000 of insurance that has been paid but isn't in this piece of paper. Otherwise, it's somewhat accurate. There's one item in here that unfortunately can only be discussed in camera for an inaccuracy, but that one is there as well. And that one could total 120,000-ish, but it's not a for sure thing. And if you remind me in camera, I'll tell you what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Otherwise, you'll see our income here over expenses on this piece of paper shows $645,000 surplus last year. But I can tell you 100 of that for sure isn't there, possibly another 120, and the rest of it is made up by that infrastructure money we received from the government and the added taxes to the roll for the elevator that was completed. So it's not that we really budgeted to have that much surplus, that's just how the year happened to turn out. We won't have those final numbers for a little while yet, but I wanted to at least get you seeing where they're at in the office as far as what it looks like for how last year's turning out. So it certainly won't be a deficit last year, although some of that money, the infrastructure money, is earmarked, has to be to infrastructure, obviously. The tax windfall isn't as earmarked. That can be certainly used as council sees fit. So what will end up happening here is the same as every year. As those are finalized, eventually it will be transferred to general surplus, to general reserve, I should say. So the money comes forward to the next year, so it's available if we wish to use it. So it isn't lost by any means,
You
but
can
that's
use
what
it
it's
for
for.
any purpose, not what it was earmarked for the previous year.
That's right. Now, the only weird thing is we have a bunch of reserve accounts. So say, for example, if it was in fire truck reserve, we can at any time use it for a fire truck without going to public hearing. Money that's in general reserve, we either have to say at budget time what we're doing, or we have to hold a public hearing to take it out of general reserve later, because it's so generalized. So we have to come back to the residents and say, here's what we're doing. If it's at budget time though, that's not required because we're already holding the public hearing, so it's just part of that. So there's certainly, you know, over the years, council's been of two minds. Some years council puts it all into designated reserves. Other years council goes more to general reserve, just depending on who's sitting around the table and what the goal is to do with it later on. Part 2 of that is also available to the public as a trial balance of our reserve funds. Now I say trial, but these are fairly accurate. You'll see the interest is into the end of December. That's all part of the bank reconciliations that are being done, so these are all reconciled already. It's just the overall reconciliation isn't finished. So a couple highlights here. The general fund right now is holding $355,000, but that's almost $4,000 of interest on it the last year, just because rates are so high right now. Other ones that are of interest, the paved roads reserve, 113 in that. We also have the machinery replacement reserve, which is one of council's favorite reserves. If you recall, in my time here since 2022, we were running a small surplus then, so when we bought the 5th grader, we actually bought it as cash instead of out of reserve. At one time, we thought we would have to pull it from the reserve, but we didn't. So the machinery replacement reserve to the end of 23, don't spend it, has $537,000 in it. So it's a fairly healthy reserve. There's enough there to purchase some equipment if we wish to, as long as it's part of our capital planning. Bridge replacements holding $267,000 right now, which is a nice place because at some point a bridge will come up. There's a library expansion reserve, which is kind of funny because they've probably all done that. So someday we can clean that up into something. The emergency equipment reserve, that's where we put the sign money for those Rural 911 signs that didn't get spent. So we put it there specifically so it was held separate from everything else so we could see it, which accounts for its balance of $97,000. So the sign money is just over half of that. We do have $25,000 for grain bearing roads, which is sort of a capital fund thing if we're fixing up some of those roads or making new ones. And the paved road reserve from the LUD is sitting at $41,000, so certainly there's been some discussion that crack sealing should be done. So there's pavement money on both sides to do some crack sealing and repairs. We have a building reserve fund, and it's sitting at $385,000. And I think that has been kind of earmarked for the idea of replacing the office someday, but certainly it would apply for any building, so there's some money there. There's some airport reserve, and I'm not entirely sure why we hold that reserve. There's probably a good reason, but it's got $36,000 in it. There's some general reserves left over from the LUD, their generals, so there's $208,000 there. Machinery replacement reserve for the LUD still has $67,000 in it. Federal gas tax is one of the bigger ones. The LUD version is $164,000. The other side of it is $521,000. We have some physician recruitment money, which isn't that much either. But there's a touch there. The trust funds for the cemetery are very sacred. There's some special rules around those ones. But there's also a trust fund for recreation with $11,000 in it, which is more generally for recreation. So that's a peek at those as we look towards the idea of what to do with the budget. So we kind of know if we're thinking of buying some capital equipment, where the money can come from to do that. The other two attachments tonight, there's a list of first draft of budget numbers. So this is rough. You'll recognize this from last year. It's that same document we used with the updated stuff. So what you can find out of this is the actual expenditures last year and the actual income for certain lines. Shows you what the budget was. There's a few places that's not accurate. Specifically with the reserve fund transfers, those budget numbers aren't what we actually approved. They didn't get in. And then it shows anything we've spent this year, and it shows a proposed budget, and finally it shows a change. So what I've done here with staff is we've run through and we've just put in numbers that make sense for what we're seeing from the year before, with a little bit of extra into gravel crushing, gravel hauling, because we talked about the Sarah Lake Road stuff, that extra turning into that. As it sits, this budget isn't balanced, but it's close to it. So certainly we can wiggle whatever we want to wiggle, but to keep taxes about the same, if we take something away from someplace and put it someplace else, we end up there. If we just play and add things, we would be into tax increase territory fairly quickly. And we're still figuring out the final assessment numbers too, because that elevator made such a big difference to the actual assessment values. Even if we were to charge the same amount for taxes, it would actually look like a tax decrease to some. So we'll see what we do with that. But my ask for council is to spend some time and go through this, please. Line by line, make notes, talk about things you want to talk about. We're going to come together as a council and run through this whole thing. But this gives you a good chance to start looking at it and see it. There's also an update list. So this is rough changes that were made from last year. So I'll just run through them so the public has some idea of what we're talking about so far. These aren't approved by council. These are just discussion items. So we've added the cost of the GIS unit. Because of it not being spun up immediately and because of the potential discounts, we've only added $120,000 because it won't exist for the whole year. We had talked last year about 35,000 to the ski club. It wasn't expended last year because the other partners hadn't come out, so that needs to go in someplace. Although arguably it could come from general reserve because we had intended to do it last year and didn't. In this budget it isn't from that, it's just there as cash. We've added the Swan Valley Fire, but then also taken out the Swan River Fire and made a bunch of adjustments there. Fuel is down by $32,000 because we underspent so much. So it's a little bit down, but certainly not all the way to what last year was because it was a light year. The transmission for the one grader was $80,000, it's removed. Sarah Lake Road for $150,000 is removed. Contracted road maintenance was lowered by 20 because we didn't spend it last year. The hope is with more equipment and more men this year, we won't need to. Emergency snow clearing was lowered by 55 because unless something changes in the next couple of weeks, the emergency snow clearing is always spent in the spring, it's not spent in the fall. But we do have the snow blower now that's supposed to prevent those needs. So the hope is it leaves 10,000 there just in case, but this year we get away without spending it so we can use it for something else. Air transport was lowered by 35, and that was based on what the budget was last year, but we haven't actually seen the budget for this year. So if it's similar, otherwise we'll have to go to whatever the budget comes from Airport Commission.
Looks like gonna be a meeting on the 13th, I think.
Okay.
They're still working on the date, but it seems to work for everybody. You get an email, okay? You're on there too, right?
Yeah,
You should have got an email today from Stu.
today.
From
Okay.
Stu, yeah.
It's a topic for later, but while we're talking airport, and you guys are both on it, Airport Commission has a budget for training. And the fire board is going to be doing training on airport fires. And so the request went to the manager of the airport to cost share some of that training. It was denied by the airport manager on the basis that that funding can only be used to train staff of the town of Swan River. And the firefighters are no longer staff of the town, but it's an airport commission for the whole valley. So if you have time at that meeting to discuss the appropriateness of training the fire department for their fires, it seems a little silly that they would deny the request on the basis of, well, they don't work for the town anymore, so we're not paying any of it. It just kind of was a silly answer that I don't think was thought through well, maybe.
Their fire department, what they do in the town, like, no, the fire board does now, right?
Yeah, so. Bozeman landfill was lowered by 5,000. That was on the basis of looking at what we didn't spend, plus the changes to how we're doing it. Birchwood Cemetery was removed. The doctor's fee at Benito was removed because that doesn't look like it's going to run this year. We don't have enough. $90,000 for the pool was removed. $72,000 for the Centennial Arena was removed, and $15,000 for Swan River Parks was removed. That's on the advice of Shared Services Committee for what they think is going to happen in that new agreement, but obviously those can change depending on what gets agreed to. We need to finalize the labor cost estimates. They were working on those today. They're almost done. When Scott is back, we are going to take another stab at capital roadworks estimates for Road 218, that road by the airport. He's looked at it, he knows what needs to be done, but we're going to put down on paper roughly what we think that will cost, because as a capital item, we could use various funds for that. We're going to look again at the crack sealing estimates, get sort of nailed down. What's this going to cost to go seal cracks, or we should seal them this year? And then between him, but also council, nail down that capital equipment plans for what, if anything, we're purchasing this year. So we get that properly into the budget. But we're certainly not starting at square one. We've got quite a lot of work done here already, but it's very quickly going to be council's turn to have a lot of input.
We're not looking to buy a grader this year, are we?
No, it's not frees us up to do some other things. And there's 500 some thousand in that reserve right now. The draft budget shows another 125 being put into it. So, you know, there's really 600 some thousand dollars for equipment, which would buy one brand new grader, only one anymore. But it could certainly buy a variety of other things depending on.
But we have some other items that we need, right?
We sure do.
Some equipment for Ward 6.
Private fleet for Ward 6.
I'm sure someone's got a broken down something we could get cheap for Ward 6.
So they can just travel and own risk signs?
Yeah.
It's separate from Swan then, I guess,
Yeah.
is it?
Any questions on that?
Yeah, just the shared services. I'm a little bit concerned about that.
We haven't
But I guess
yet.
we won't know until there's more meetings.
There's no meeting, there hasn't been a meeting, have you had a
Yeah,
meeting?
we're waiting for the town to suggest the next meeting
Right.
date. They said that they had some things they needed to do first. From what my understanding was, one of those things was go negotiate with a different municipality. And that could take a while. So we just
Wait,
wait.
But my idea is if council's not comfortable with the previous figures we paid, being a representative of Ward 5, which is basically like part of the town for the most part, I feel we should be doing something here. What we do, I don't know, but I think there'll be some kind of kickback if,
Well,
like, they take the Birchwood Cemetery, for instance, you know, like, how many people end up there? It'll be a two-tier system then, or what's gonna, you know?
Well, I don't want to get too far into our negotiations because we're trying to keep them somewhat confidential, but
Yeah.
what we have suggested to the town is, in general terms, we want to understand why we pay and other municipalities don't pay for the same things. So please provide us some reasoning on how this is equitable. So if everybody pays, it's equitable. If nobody pays, it's equitable. If there's different service fees for different people, depending on if you paid or not, that too could be equitable.
On usage.
But right now, the scenario of the previous agreement and what happened last year was we paid $400,000 and our neighbors paid zero. And paid
No,
the
I
same
understand
service
that,
fees. And so there needs to be some equity.
But you know where I'm coming from.
Absolutely. And I suspect the answer will be in the middle somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, surely there'll be something in the middle, but unfortunately, we continue to want to meet and
Think you-
they're
Off.
not currently interested
Okay.
in that. But,
Just want my feelings known at the table.
yeah, no, and I think you've expressed that a couple times. I think everybody's hearing you. I don't think you're being ignored. It's just, we continue to wait because we've only had one meeting so far. I thought we would have had 2 or 3 and had a draft agreement here for us to approve already. But it's just not happening. I expected the draft agreement by the first week of January. Because we gave 3 months' notice that we wanted a new agreement. And I thought we would have negotiated November, December, had it all figured out, been back here first meeting of January to work out the kinks with council, and have her signed and done before the 15th of January.
But they wouldn't get it done, they realized it's budgeting time.
Well, there's a couple other things at play. You know, they've made very clear to everybody that any expense that's not declared by the 28th of February isn't going in their budget. And then they've also made rather clear that if they don't have a signed agreement, they don't pay for things. I think back to Fire Board, where until the day we signed the agreement, we couldn't change how the split was working on the revenue, even though we had agreed in principle several months before, and we then waited several weeks for the fire commissioner to come up for the signing ceremony. There was no give on the day for calculations. It had to be the day the signing ceremony was held, instead of the day we actually both agreed, which did cause some change in who paid what. And probably change in us paying a little more than we would have had to if it had been the day we both passed our resolutions. But they were exceedingly clear that the day something is signed is the day it starts. It doesn't get backdated. So while we sit without an agreement, their own suggestion is we won't be paying for this empty period. I don't know why they wouldn't hurry up and negotiate if that's,
2 or 3 months, we don't have to pay.
I mean, our council may choose to pay them anyway, but certainly when the shoe's on the other foot, it's always what's most beneficial to the other party.
Well, we're gonna have to know pretty soon for budgeting.
Because we're soon going to have the answer, and I think it's the same answer they would give us if we sent a request over in June. They'd say, I'm sorry, we're done budgeting already. So we'll see. I'm hoping they call for a meeting any day. Any other discussion on the budget stuff? We're going to look into March sometime for getting everybody together for a special meeting to spend a couple hours on it and go through it. 7-1, gravel hauling tender. I believe we can do this in the open tonight, but if anyone gets to the point at some point that we think we should go in camera, we'll drop it.
Report card.
Yes. So attached to the public agenda are the two tenders that we received. One was received from Cook Brothers, and these are on our standard bid form. So they bid essentially an hourly rate of $130 in Area 1, which is the south end of the municipality, $128 an hour in Area 2, which is the north end. I don't know how the trucks are cheaper to run up there, but it could be because there's less gravity in the north.
Yeah, just less resistance.
Yeah.
Putting less gravel too.
Cost per load is $1.25 a yard there. They also bid an end dump tandem because sometimes we require gravel and that for special situations, so we had it in there. The other bid received was from JTL Backhoe Services. They only bid Area 1. They bid $160 an hour for Area 1. Area 2 they weren't interested in. And $2 a yard for loading. And then there was also the opportunity for a triaxle belly dump for $180 an hour at 24 yards per trip. They indicated they'd be hauling with 4 semis, belly dump trailers, possibly 5 units, and they say we'll maintain to keep a good working relationship with the foreman. It goes on to page 2 as well. Grader operators and any other municipal works, thanks to the Reeve and Council's opportunity to work together. So also attached to them, for Council's eyes only, at least so far, is a bid scoring sheet. So what this sheet provides for is scoring of these bids, not only based on price, but also past performance on municipal works. Both bidders have done substantial work for the municipality in the last 12 months. And so this looks at if prior contracts were completed on time, if the reliability was there, if they said they'd be there on Wednesday, were they there on Wednesday? Or did we have graders sitting there on Wednesday and nobody showed up until Friday? So the scoring is there for council. In the end, the bid from JTL Backhoe Services has a higher score than the bid from Cooks, even though the price is higher. So the recommendation is that in the Area 1, the south area, we would contract with JTL Backhoe Services, and the north area we would contract with Cook Brothers.
Why didn't Bartman give you a price for the north?
I was not interested in the north at this time. I did ask him, and he provided a lot of information, some of which I can't share here, but the specific parts that not doing the north, he was concerned that if he did the whole thing, he might not be able to complete it by our deadline, and he didn't want to be in a position to not do that.
Well, it might be good to have 2 different operators.
Sure, they should be able to be done
Should
twice
get
as
the road
fast.
done quicker. You know, this could be an experimental year for us to try something like this. Competition won't hurt.
Where's the line, Harlington Road?
Yep.
Harlington Road?
I don't think we sorted out the little bit of it that's not a PR road, but we'll sort that out with whatever makes sense.
Well, we should try and get the miles as close as possible to be gravel, you know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe, we'll see.
Yeah, that's gonna be difficult, because the Harlington Road's not gonna end up in the right place.
Certainly there's some view that there'll be a different speed of operation. Councillor Blosha.
I agree, it's good to have competition. The price is a big difference, and next year you're gonna see that other price go up, and that's a sad thing too, because those guys aren't gonna bid that. When they see that,
Do you know what our price per hour was this year?
you know what I mean? Price per hour is a big difference here.
It's like $30.
It's 35 difference, and 75 loading, 75 cents loading difference too.
I should be able to find it.
That's a big jump.
Oh, no, you'll have it, because I'll only have the sign.
With the 2 different
We're
prices,
130 to 160, so we're 30.
with the 2 different prices per hour, sure you see a difference now.
Here,
Okay,
hey,
you see a difference now.
I know, but
But
you
I mean
see
the
difference
final.
now, but next year when these bids come in, they're both gonna be high.
Oh, you know, one guy could drop.
You gotta look at, the
I
only
don't
way to
know.
find out is when we look at how many yards are hauled and how many hours, right? Because
Yeah.
maybe you're higher per hour, but you took 80% as
Hopefully,
many hours, right?
Right, exactly.
hopefully
Right.
you're right, but I just,
You have to look, to see the final number.
okay, but I see the numbers right now.
Because one could be hauling for 1 month and the other guy could be hauling for 6 weeks.
I guess the way to figure out the end is how many miles did each contractor gravel, what's the total cost, and you get your cost per mile, right? I mean,
Anyway, that's just a concern of mine because it's a
well,
difference.
it's a legitimate concern. I mean, there's-
So I have last year's contract here, and the bid from Cook Brothers last year was $152 per hour.
So it's-
So they actually
162,
dropped
so we
it
dropped.
by,
they were using government rates or something.
they were,
Heavy haul.
yeah, so they've dropped $22 an hour this year compared to last year. And the heavy haul rates have actually gone up. But
And I'm
quoted
wondering
price has
if
gone down.
their bid's gonna stand if they only get part of the contract. I don't know.
They did know that the bid
It's gonna
in
be
two areas
split. They knew it's
separately.
gonna be split, eh?
Well,
Well,
then
how
it
do
could
we
be.
know though? We
No.
didn't say yet.
We said it could be.
Could be.
That's why we had the two areas, is just like, you know, there was the opportunity to get one or both.
Well, I like the idea that it's hopefully it would be done before October, you know. By August would be.
August would be,
End of July, I think you said it could be done.
that's when they start combining nowadays.
Our prior contract required that they be completed by August 31st, or they'd be penalized $500 per day.
Yeah,
But
August.
council never has the heart to take the $500 a day, which is why the new contract terms are different than what was bid. It was for a 10% holdback. So if you complete on time, you receive that final 10%. If you don't complete on time, you lose the 10%. And the thought was that council might have a little easier time with enforcing the penalty if it
We've done it
wasn't
before.
have to go get it back.
Years ago.
Because technically speaking, under the current contract, we could probably have issued a penalty of all of September and all of October for the work not being done. And possibly actually all of August too. There would have likely been a penalty of around $30,000 for not completing the contract on time. Because it was 40 days from the start, and I remember we started really early, and then we stopped for weeks at a time with no explanation. It would just, we'd be graveling, and then all of a sudden we weren't graveling for a couple weeks, and then we'd start again. What do we want to do for decision making? Do we want to take this in camera and discuss it further? Do we want to make a decision here? We don't have to award this tonight. We could wait on this. We have 2 members away. You know, for planning, the sooner we award it to the companies, the better, but 2 more weeks wouldn't kill them, I'm sure. That's an option too.
Maybe, can we wait for 2 weeks? I mean, just to include these other two.
It's one of our biggest expenses.
Mhm, absolutely.
Include the other, make our councils a whole decision, would be better, I think.
Okay, so what we will suggest is we're tabling this. I will try to mention it to them if I remember to take a look at this and think it through and have some ideas, and the same for everybody else. If next meeting you can come back with thoughts or, you know, anything else additional, whatever you want to do there, and we'll try and make a decision next time around. If that works for everybody. And certainly there's no requirement, the council's not bound by the recommendation. We're here to make decisions, we're not here to say rubber stamp things, so it doesn't have to be what was recommended. Let's move on to 7.2, rural water pipeline. So there's a document here with a bit of a proposal I wrote up for some pre-planning I really think we should be doing. I want to discuss it tonight and get some input. The previous pipeline map we have is now more than 10 years old. So there's been some changes to where people are, and certainly changes to who wants water. In some locations there's more, and in some places there's less now. So it would probably be advantageous to update that. And the reason we're talking this is there are some pending changes provincially for how these things are paid for. We also have had contact from a business that's resident in the municipality that is willing to pay a share of phase 1 of the pipeline costs to get the pipeline going and get it to their business. So there's that opportunity on the table. But we're also not blind to the fact that we are in the dying days of government. And so we will either see a massive infrastructure program announced in a week or 2 in the federal budget this year, or we will see one announced as soon as the government change happens. So within a year or 2, there will be an infrastructure program for water pipelines, probably with a short fuse month or so to apply, and there will not be time to start on it then. So our suggestion is that we start on this now, and then the next few weeks to months as we have time, survey through all of our rural area for who's interested in water, and then give them some options. And again, with the idea that we don't know for sure, but try to explain. So tell us about what you want to do. How much would you use? Is it just a house? Do you have cattle? Do you have something else? What would you be willing to pay for this? If it's $10,000, is it okay? If it's $20,000, is it okay? If it's $30,000, are you owed at 30? If it's more than 20, you won't pay that? Give us some idea, because then we can have our map and say, okay, as we plan this, we know it's gonna be 18,000. Okay, here's the ones we know will connect for that. So give some of those options to try and give some information and get a fairly accurate number of where it would go. It's best for us if it's the same route, because there's already an environmental license for that. But there might be some changes or additions, and you could always modify the license. But it would give us the updated information to be ready to apply, assuming that a program is coming.
It's such a catch-22. The more the join, the cheaper it is. So
Exactly.
you know, like it's a,
Still lots of people interested in it.
it's a,
And I think we would make the offer, at least my reading of the municipality is that we would make the offer to debenture some of it if we had to for those
Yeah.
people. So you wouldn't necessarily pay $20,000 up front. You might pay $2,000 a year for 10 years plus the interest, just to make it affordable. And you know, for a lot of people, $2,000 a year to have rural water would be a steal of a deal.
Yeah, well, instead of having the home.
No.
look at it. See, back when we were looking at this before, they discontinued, well, they didn't discontinue it, but it was only for agricultural purposes.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
so you go all the way out to some guy that's got a cattle out there, and you go by 8 people on the way, but they can't hook them. So, that, you know, it
This would
was-
be
it
everything.
really didn't make a lot of sense, you know.
Yeah.
The thought is this is gonna cost some money, there's gonna be some mailings and such, but it's gonna be less than $5,000 to get our ducks in a row, which
I
is a
think we
pretty
should-
good investment to
I
just
think
be
we should
ready.
invest in it. There's lots of people
I
that
see
still
you got
like
you-
it.
You got down here about a new water agreement too.
We must negotiate that. Hopefully with more speed than the shared services agreement.
We did that back about 2012 or something, I think.
So they
2011.
canceled that one was the town canceled.
We did with the town, we had an agreement with the
Yeah,
town.
the town
They just
council.
put in their new water plant and stuff, then they had lots of water and everything.
And if you go back in history, that water plant was overbuilt to provide the water for the pipeline. And the funding it received all that funding because it was going to provide water for a pipeline. So the water plant is at barely any capacity used to run the town. But then in the most recent water agreement, there's, I believe it's $2.5 million given to the town for the privilege of connecting to the water, which is a lot. And then the rates are also the same rates you pay at a house in Swan River. So if you work out the math on that, we would have to charge an extra $2.5 million to people along the pipeline, plus the entire pipeline cost on top of the regular cost to get water in the Swan River, which would make our water be double to triple the price of town water without any sewer service, which is kind of a silly thing because the price to treat additional water for the town, much like us, is almost nothing. So say it was sold to us at half price wholesale, they would still make plenty of money for their town people. Their water rates would all go down as a result of us buying water at wholesale, and we would have the money in there to haul it to our people and deliver it for about the same price as town water. There is also a business that has approached us that is interested in selling us bulk treated water for the pipeline outside of the town system. They're a little bit different location than where we would pick up from the town. The town pick up an 8-inch lines available just across the river for us to hook into. If we took from the other business, we'd have a couple extra miles of pipeline. But if you're looking at 50 miles of pipeline, 2 more isn't
No,
a huge lot, and it would allow us to pick up a bunch more users on that extra 2 miles too.
at least it gives us some option.
It does. And there's also the third option. When the town built their water plant, they obtained an additional water rights license to provide water for our pipeline of a couple acre feet, which they have never used. We could transfer that water rights license to Swan Valley West and simply drill a well. The cost to build a treatment plant with their own well will be less than $1 million. And the cost to connect to the town is $2.5 million. It's humble opinion, stupid to build a second water treatment plant, but so is the $2.5 million. So that's why the agreement
He
needs to be
said they
negotiated.
got extra money when they built it
Exactly.
for that purpose.
And the agreement that came about wasn't a great agreement.
The one
Swan
from
was.
years ago.
Yeah, the 3 year ago one, it just wasn't good. I think it was done a little bit maybe out of desperation to get one done very quickly, to try and preserve the water pipeline funding that was available. In the end, it didn't work anyway, but it maybe wasn't the best agreement that should have been reached.
Well, I guess we gotta start somewhere, see who's interested and how much they're willing to pay and,
And part of that will answer how much water we need to have. You
yeah.
know, how much are we needing
Yeah,
to pick
how
up
much
from
do you
someplace.
use, yeah.
So,
Well, they'll know because they haul it, a lot of them.
Mhm.
They know how much they haul.
and I'm sure they'll use more. I know I would use more if I wasn't hauling it. I'd have more than a 1 minute shower in the morning.
Oh,
You know, I might go for a whole 10 minutes if it just came in the tap.
No, definitely,
get it too hot, you never wanna come out.
definitely.
So if everybody's okay with that, we will as time allows. I don't know when time will allow, but it will in the next few weeks, so we'll get started on something. Because I know there's a lot of people who've contacted me in the last couple of weeks, quite interested in the status of that project. So give us an opportunity to re-gauge that interest.
Seems like we're getting more and more acreages and stuff like that too, like.
And I think we will get more if there's water out there.
Yeah, what, yeah.
There'll be a lot more
It'll increase
taxable
the value
property.
of everybody's property, that's for sure.
Okay, let's move to 7.3. Attached is a draft tender package for supply and crushing of gravel. So this is again a rewrite from last year. And Scott has not had a chance to go through this. There's some technical details we're likely going to change about, specifically it doesn't even say the percentage of clay yet, but that'll get put in. Or double check the sizing and such. The important part of this is for council to see it, offer up any suggestions tonight or the next day or two, please. This is asking for a couple things. So companies that wish to supply gravel and or crush gravel. So we know that there are several crushing companies available, but each of them has access to different gravel pits. So the first ask here is for anyone with a gravel pit that wants us to purchase gravel there to show us what pit they have available. We may well go look at the gravel, what the cost is for the raw gravel, and if they have only certain crushers allowed or not. So say for example, Mr. Neely has a pit, but he says only Mr. Burick can crush in it. Mr. Kushniryk can't. We need to know that because it makes a difference to who we have crushing. It also provides for the idea of them supplying crushed gravel. So say for example, Mr. Neely happens to have a gravel crusher and has a pile of 10,000 yards crushed and would like to sell it. This is your opportunity to tell us the price per yard to just buy it, ready to go, without having to bring a crusher in. And then the second part of it goes into crushing, what you have available for crushing gravel at wherever. And again, with that first part, you know, if you're the crusher and you have a certain gravel pit that you happen to own and only you can crush in, that's part of the decision-making council will have to make eventually. It asks on the crushing part for you to give us some idea of the minimum amount to crush per location, or if you wish to charge a mobilization fee instead. So say, for example, you say 10,000 yards and we come to a location and crush 10,000 yards, we would expect to not pay for you to move there. But if we said, well, we're only going to crush 2,000 yards here, obviously there's some cost to take your equipment there and work for one day and move. So there's some opportunity for people to bid that a little better than they did in the past. In the past, it was more just a holistic, what's your price to crush? And then it was all kind of sorted out after. But as you know, in the last year, we had some issues with not being able to crush in certain pits because it just didn't work out, even though we wanted gravel from some of them. So I was hoping this solves that a little bit, plus hopefully gets us more bids. Because ideally, it would be nice to have 10 or 15 gravel price bids from different pits and at least 2 or 3 crushing bids would be nice to see. So, if there's anything tonight, great. Otherwise, if you could read through that and say by the end of Friday, get questions, concerns, comments in. I'm going to go through this with Scott and then we'll get it out next week, hopefully. People can get bidding on it and then we'll
I
be
don't know
coming
what-
back here.
I don't know what I would ask, like, I don't know. You know, I don't know where all the gravel is and all that kind of stuff, but I guess it's up to the I mean, it looks good to me when I read it this morning, I mean,
And I think from the discussions I've had with Scott, it's our belief there's some water gravel available in pits that would save a lot on the hauling. Even if it's, say, $1 a yard more for the gravel,
Yeah.
it might save 6 miles of transport. In which case, pay the extra $20 for the gravel and save the 20 minutes of driving that cost us more than that.
the only thing we might come across is mobility or moving from one pit to the other again, you know. That's gotta go into there too.
And there's also been some suggestion from some suppliers that they may come to the area and over crush, say, twice as much as we actually want,
Oh.
and leave a pile sitting, and then the next year we could purchase that pile or buy it this year as a stockpile. There's some options there that might work out. There's a couple areas, you know, to the north certainly, and then also to the southeast. We're hauling a very long distance right now.
How much we got up in the mountain there?
It's supposed to have 8,000 yards.
8,000? That's good for Ward 5. I don't know, not enough for 6, but.
We'll leave that there unless anybody else has any other things for it. We'll move on to 7.4, private works policy. So this came up, a few things here. One, the policy itself requires we review it every year. It doesn't appear it's been reviewed since about 2018. So it's probably time to do that again. And then this also came up as a billing question. So the initial part of this was someone was concerned the amount they were billed for clearing the driveway when it had only snowed once. And the bill was $125. So under this, it provides the minimum charge is actually $77.50 for the graders. And you'll note the graders are specified here by name, and pretty much none of those graders exist anymore. But I guess a grader's a grader as far as it's really concerned. It suggests here our rate per hour is $155 an hour. What staff have reiterated is that a couple years back they were told the rate had changed to $250 an hour, and that the minimum charge is now $125. But that's not supported by any written policy. It seems to have been a verbal directive, which has caused that $125 bill when it should have been $77.50, and then caused this to be flagged to go to the next meeting for us to discuss. So the question to council is, and I don't have worked out what it's costing us to run the equipment. I wish I did, but I just don't have that yet. What we want to do, if we want to change this, if we want to use what's currently written for now, it's simply a discussion point for us to have some input on what we should tell our staff, because what they're doing is not what is written down. It would probably be good if what they did was what was written down, even if we
Should
have
be
to change
using
it.
what's on paper,
Ideally.
not hearsay,
Yeah,
right? I think I know who called.
good chance.
The grader's gotta turn around at that particular spot anyway, somewhere. Like with another, 200 yards up the hill, turn around, come back. You know, so what's that, 20 minutes,
Yeah.
10 minutes, I don't know. So. Yeah, I don't know.
And the other, you raise another interesting point. It's been discussed here before, and could easily be discussed by this council. Should we charge a flat rate for driveways, or should we charge hourly? Minnetonka's Bozeman charges a flat rate for the year. No matter how much snow there is, you pay this amount, your driveway's always done. We currently charge hourly, and that's confusing to some people that own property in both, why it's such a discrepancy. This year, it's a much better deal from us because we're charging you much less. In Minnetonka's Bozeman, you paid for a full year of snow and didn't
You
get
pay
it.
it regardless.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't pay per trip in.
It's flat rate for the whole year.
Well, that seems a little bit.
So when you pay that flat rate for the whole year, are they guaranteeing that your driver gets done every,
Every time there's snow,
yeah, but
which could go the other way, right?
what about the bus routes? We always say, do that first and we'll come back and do the driveways.
And I believe it's still a
Still would-
comeback.
still
Yeah,
would
I
be
don't
that
think
way?
it's
Yeah,
the
that-
first
Yeah,
route.
okay.
that-
No,
that's
then,
just
the flat rate would almost be better, but
It would be easier for
it would be easier for the office
ratepayers to
to
understand in the
take-
office, yeah.
When it's done, it's done.
It'd be easier for the operators.
And the
too.
operators know, okay, this one gets cleaned. I don't know.
Are you gonna run into the argument where here's the road, my house is here, so I'm now paying the same flat rate as the guy who has his house way back here?
I
And it
would
takes a lot of time to do his lane.
almost suggest that we would have to deal with that somehow, a policy.
so many feet.
Yeah,
for-
so many.
You know,
Because there
this
is,
flat
like, I
rate
know
is this
exactly what
many
you're saying,
feet.
because there is some that are.
Yeah, some are
always
really,
off.
Well, I can think of one we discussed here for another
Yeah.
reason that's, you
Yeah.
know, 2,500 foot driveway.
Yeah.
That would
yeah.
gladly pay us $300 to plow the 2,500 foot driveway.
Yeah, we'd have to,
So we'd have to capture that. It wouldn't be for this year, obviously. It would have to be.
but for the one that
Fall.
was sent for the 125, I think you better change it to the 77 at least.
Yeah, I would think.
That's-
This spring.
That's the fair thing to do for that one.
Okay, so what we will give for direction to staff is to follow what's written for now. Do we want a proposal on doing flat rate to come back? So we give that some consideration. It would be effective for the fall, obviously. So we have a little time, but
We have time to look at it at least.
yeah, we don't have to make a decision on it tonight, but we can certainly talk that through and see what it would look like and what the pricing would be like.
And talk to the operators and see if they can fit it in, because if that flat rate goes out, they might have a lot
Might
more
have
than
more.
they ever did before.
Absolutely.
And we'd like to ask them first before you put it all on their shoulders. Just fair thing to do.
do we do a liability thing with it too when we do it?
There's
It's
a
in
form
there,
for it,
there's a
obviously.
form in there already for that.
Yeah,
Yeah, just that.
Yeah.
The neat part I found about this is I looked all summer for someone to mow Birch River School, and had I read this, I could have just sent a mower up there and mowed it. It would have been great, so to buy some public works next summer to go mow the lawn.
okay, wait till you see the mileage rate.
And if you read the policy, actually, there's no mileage for the mower, there's only mileage for the grader. That's what got
There
me.
will be in the new one.
Yeah, the new one will have, but this current one doesn't have it in there.
And I was told to use
I could
policy.
actually tell you someone that would do that for you.
So our decision is we're going to ask staff to do what's written down for now. And in due course, we're going to come back with a version that would be a flat rate. We're going to talk to staff, talk to Public Works,
Per
see what they
time
think.
or per year?
Per
Per
year.
year.
And we'll bring that back and council can see if they like the idea or not. Because we'll come up with what the pricing would be. Because it's not going to be $70, obviously. It's going to be more. But
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I know, that's why I said, I gotta talk to the staff, because it could add a real workload on. So, anyway, something to look at.
Some people have no option.
whereas the owners of Southeast 133528 West have made application to subdivide an additional 6.31 acre parcel to add to the previous subdivision of 3.69 acres and require approval from the Municipality of Swan Valley West as per community planning. And whereas the Council of the Municipality of Swan Valley West has reviewed said application along with the letter received from Municipal Relations dated February 14th, 2024, and have noted the taxes on the property to be divided have been paid, and further that the municipality has no objection to the aforementioned subdivision, therefore be it resolved that we do hereby approve the subdivision of the above noted property, provided that all conditions and requirements are met as included in the letter from Municipal Relations. Is there a mover? Councillor Blosha and Councillor Neely. So I will open up discussion on this, as a point to Councillor Burick. You will notice that Municipal Relations was at work on the 14th of February to send a letter.
At night,
Really?
at 10:23 PM.
Miles better, well, I guess, whatever.
Copy of the plan is attached here. This is near Kenville, just the other side of the highway from Kenville. So they're essentially expanding the yard site a little bit to use the full 10 acres they're allowed for that.
That's their existing one, right?
Yeah, the
No.
existing one that becomes a
Well,
little
nobody,
bigger.
the one there,
The bushes
nobody
and-
lives there, they
Yeah.
didn't wanna be a new house built, which is nice.
So that's not their, Carrie, that's not their existing yard then?
No,
No, they're
Because
not.
according to this thing,
no, they're right beside it, they're here, and then it will be here.
because there's a highway right there.
Yeah, I know, but they're both, are the highways, it's not their existing yard.
Okay, okay.
Well, this isn't the existing yard?
No,
It's beside.
it's the one
It's
right
beside-
beside it, the
So
next
The
driveway.
existing yard must be right here, right?
You know what I
Right.
mean? Go next driveway right across from that guy at the Kenville
Okay.
corner there.
Their existing yard must be right here, right?
Yes.
Over you go.
'Cause this is right on the curve.
No,
Right
just
on the
before you
curve.
hit the curve, right
It's right
there.
on the curve
Then
by
go
looks
up
of
the
it.
little hill.
Up the little hill.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a Travels with Bill episode that shows this.
Take a drone, Bill, we should take Bill's drone.
There's drone footage of this on the channel. That
I
exact
just
spot
follows the
actually.
bush line around, so it's in the bush for
There was a home there,
years.
yeah,
Yeah, a long time ago.
yeah.
Any further discussion? Now we'll call the question. Those in favor? That's carried. 7-6. Whereas the owner of Northwest 363529 West has made application to subdivide a 10-acre parcel and requires approval from the Municipality of Swan Valley West as per community planning. And whereas the Council for the Municipality of Swan Valley West has reviewed said application along with a letter received from Municipal Relations dated February 21st, 2024, and have noted that taxes on the property to be divided have been paid, and further that the municipality has no objection to the aforementioned subdivision. Therefore be it resolved that we do hereby approve the subdivision of the above noted property, provided that all conditions and requirements are met as included in the letter from Municipal Relations. Is there someone to move the resolution? Councillor Neely, and someone to second the resolution? Councillor Blosha. Again, a map and details of the subdivision request are attached. So it's a yard site that's there already, they're subdividing it off. Something we see fairly often, they already have access to that property. And it does not look, from the portion I see of the map, like there's necessarily a separate access to the rest of it, unless there is further on in that field. So we may end up getting held up here for a driveway.
There's a half mile around on Easton, or a whole mile, there's 2/4 there. around
Okay,
east
so there must
and
be
west,
something
so
further.
there
Because I can't see they're going through that little wee driveway with equipment. There must
No.
be
I
something
think
else.
yeah, there's a whole half section
Okay,
there
so they should be
together, so. This is our mom and dad's yard site.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. Those in favor? That's carried. Moving to 7-7. A copy of the Swan Valley Fire Board budget is attached. This was approved by the Fire Board a few nights ago. There was one question came up about some of the details and the expenses, so I've also attached the detailed budget lines that show the estimates for each of those lines. Yeah, I think it shows them all. Along with what the actual budget was in 2022 and 2023, along with the actual spending in 22 and 23. So the unaudited 23, obviously there might be a couple changes there as they finish up their audit on that. But for the most part, those are accurate numbers. So there has been some substantive changes. There's no longer 911 fees in it because those are now the responsibility of the town, not the fire board, etc. Councillor Neely.
It's about 8 down from the top, 2410-1900.
The question is why?
20-some% increase. Budget.
1900 I see is more than 20%. I see it as like 300%.
No,
Are we looking at
the
right one?
line is,
Oh, fire chief?
yeah, that's right.
Okay.
I didn't know whether I should say that.
No, that's fine. It's, so the fire chief was, I can't find it here.
Last year budgeted,
It
like
was
this over
73,
20%, well, actual and budget are a little different.
Okay, I found it. I think.
Close to 20% increase budgeted.
The board did hold a competitive process, and that was the low bidder.
Okay,
There was some change. So the number that's there is the fire chief portion from previous years, but my understanding is there was a second portion in a different budget that paid additional monies for something that wasn't exactly the fire chief portion of it.
oh, and the old budget.
Yeah, so like what shows here is what was paid for fire chief in the old budget. But and it was a long discussion, but what I got out of it was there was some additional money in a different town budget that was paid to the same individual for something that wasn't the fire chief. Like it was
Oh.
a training thing or an inspection thing or something.
I see.
And the other thing that changes here is this includes now fire inspections for the Swan Valley West area, which before it didn't include. So previously, even though we had fire response coverage, no one was doing the mandatory fire inspections. So this will include the work to do that.
And I see our overall cost of fire is up quite a bit from where it was, like 2 years ago or whatever.
It is. Some
We
of
were around
that,
120,000, now it's 185,000.
some of that is spin-up costs, but certainly not all of it.
It's some.
Some of it is setup costs, the incorporation and the setting everything up,
Oh.
but not all of it. By no means is it all of it. I think there's about $14,000 of setup costs.
I can see we're,
What the fire chief?
there's
Fire chief.
at least 10 more for us there. On one item. You know, like it's. Yeah. Okay.
7.8, Planning District Budget. Copy of that is attached as well. This is from our dear folks at Planning Board, which happens to be Councillor Burick and myself. So this budget shows a slight increase to Swan Valley West for about $500, not even $400 more in 24 than in 23. So all the numbers are listed out there for what the increases are. There's a little bit of increases to the pay for the development officer. Is the most of it.
How, excuse me, but how is that determined? How is everybody's amount, contribution? Is it per capita? No, it can't be per capita, it's gotta be.
No, it is.
It's funny that the town and us are exactly the same now.
I'm just curious because the town is the only one that didn't really see an increase.
We paid $8. Why not?
It is
Come on,
$8.
Brad, why not
I
$8?
apologize.
I don't think I know the answer to that
Oh,
question.
okay, yeah.
I was there for
just-
budgeting, but I don't know why they're the same now.
Maybe it's on past developments or, I don't know.
You know, I
It
think,
can't be based on per capita, it can't be based on assessment.
don't quote me, but a year ago when I first got there, I think that it's based on the number of developments.
It must be
Because I
because,
think it's based on the prior year, how many
Yeah.
of the permits were in your municipality.
well, you were
I
on
kinda
there, weren't you,
think
Brian, on the
That
planning
makes more
district?
sense.
Just
Yeah.
lately, just
No,
lately.
you used to be on there, weren't you?
I kind of think that that's what it's about.
Oh, okay.
Don't, like I said, don't quote me
No,
on that,
no,
but
that
I think
sounds
that's what it
reasonable,
is.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, because,
Yeah, because we've never had the assessment population discussion there, so
No.
it's gotta be something else. And I'm sure when I asked the first time, it was something about the number of developments. It might be a flat fee plus the number of developments, but it's something to do with how much work is done in your
this looks funny,
municipality.
we're both exactly the same, right to the penny.
I'm just looking at the differences between the other ones, the other years. Those differences are like they're in steps too, right? It's like 2 permits and 1 permit, and I suspect that's what it is.
Yeah, it could be.
I will try to,
No, I know.
Zbirun will remind me to,
I
next
just
time we're
don't-
there to ask that.
Don't
make
lose
sure
any
of it.
sleep over it.
Yeah.
Just curious.
7.9, Library Board. I'd love to be presenting you a Library Board budget tonight. We're not. So let's talk some of that in the open because we're the Library Board.
What are we eating
So we held a meeting on February 22nd. I am at the board currently as the extra. If you remember, he sent me over there to assist Mr. McGregor. So, where to start? We talked last meeting about the inability of the board to set meeting dates. So the board did finally settle in on a meeting on the 22nd of February. After several false starts of not notifying all the members there was a meeting or giving 9 hours notice to members. So we had public library services there on the 22nd. And so they didn't make a presentation, they were there to observe and answer questions. So we did ask them quite a few questions, and they pointed out that the act is quite clear, you need 2 days notice of a meeting. And so I think the board is going to try to follow that. What happened on the 22nd though is remarkable. So the board, last year's budget was done on paper with a pencil and a calculator. So every time a change was made to the budget, it would take a day or two. So say, for example, the thought was, what if we cut 10 hours of staff time? What would that do to the budget? Well, it would be a day or two before that would come back to the board with a new number because of all the figuring that had to be done. So that was quite counterproductive. So this year, the board agreed that I would undertake to make a budget file for them. So we made an Excel file, and it has all the staff listed, how many hours they work per week. It figures out what their health benefits are, what their CPP, EI, figures it all out. So if you say, well, what if they work 27 hours instead of 25? You just change the number, the whole budget updates. So we did that, much like you saw in our draft budget, went through and put those draft numbers in. And then as a board, we had met in January with the intention of passing the budget. And we went line by line through the entire budget, making changes as appropriate for what the board agreed to, and that was all done. And there was one thing that was unclear, and that was how much money was coming from the province. And so the decision of the board was to table the budget instead of passing it, and to return to the province and say, tell us to the penny how much you're contributing. So the answer to that is $83,969.24 this year is coming from the province. When that number came, it was put into the budget, and the budget was sent out to the group as, here's the updated budget. It was within $2,500 of being balanced. At our next meeting, we need to figure out if we're changing anything, we need to balance this, get it to zero, and away we go. So the morning of the 22nd, the board received a brand new budget from 2 members of the board that held their own separate meetings from the rest of the board and made a new budget. And the numbers don't match. In fact, the numbers don't match so far that if you actually take a calculator and add these numbers up, they don't even match what's at the bottom of the budget. So these numbers don't equal this total because it was all done by hand, it was added wrong. The staff budget simply isn't here to explain how the numbers were arrived at. So as you can imagine, it was a hot time in the old town that night. To say library board is going well would be a mistake. There's a lot of unhappiness over there through this budget process because, essentially 4 of the board members had their work all undone by 2 of the board members. And then for reasons that still perplex me, the chair of the board decided to not use the budget the entire board had made and instead present this new budget for approval that night. So I said, they brought it up to pass it, and I said, I have some questions, but I don't want to monopolize the table. I want everybody else to ask any questions they have first, because you probably have the same questions I do. You go ahead. I don't want you to be the one to pick all this. So we went on the table, and there were no questions by anybody. They were ready to pass the budget, even though the numbers didn't add up. So then there was some discussion. And I said, I'm not happy that a new budget would be made without consultation with the board, and that the entire board, except for 2 members, Mr. McGregor and myself, were ready to pass the new budget when it's not the budget the board made, and the numbers don't even work in it. In fact, the amount for us to pay and the amount for the town to pay are also wrong. They weren't calculated right in this. It got heated, to say the least, and then it was tabled. So there's no budget for the library. The budget was due on the 15th of January. The town's deadline is the 28th of February, which is tomorrow. The budget will not be submitted because there isn't one. We don't have a hard and fast deadline, but our agreement with the town is the budget has to be here by the end of January, so we too don't have a budget. So in our draft budget, we've simply put in last year's number again. This is not functional. This is not how boards run. I've never seen one like this, where you have 2 people that start having their own private meetings and do their own thing and come up with a new budget. And it's the same 2 people that, with the board chair, held a meeting without quorum and passed the budget once already. So they already made their own budget once before, passed it, told the rest of the board they were sending it out to the municipalities, and when it was pointed out that they didn't have quorum at the meeting, said, oh, yeah, I guess we didn't. But the reason they didn't have quorum was they didn't inform Councillor McGregor and myself there was a meeting that night. So we couldn't attend because we didn't know there was one. So it's just, we need to discuss our library board appointments in camera because something has to change to have a functional library. But I wanted to share that much of it at least with you folks here because I think the public has the right to know why there's no budget yet and why they keep hearing rumors things aren't good there. I can also share that the Rotary Club donated $10,000 to the library as they're unfortunately winding up operations, so they're using up the rest of the money. So they chose the library to receive $10,000. I spoke that night that I want that $10,000 put into a capital fund to purchase capital equipment for the library. That has not yet been the decision of the library board. There's still discussion there that it would instead be used to balance this year's budget. It would simply be used on staff time, and I don't think that would be appropriate. I think a gift like that should be a capital purchase of something.
I agree.
You know, it just doesn't make sense to,
No.
because then next year, where do you get the $10,000 from? Buy a lottery ticket? You know, like, there's gotta be some better planning. Otherwise, there's a 3-hour meeting even after we tabled the budget, so there's more to it, but that's the budget part that's troubling, that there isn't one, and I honestly don't know. The next meeting is set for the 6th of March now, because again, several board members couldn't make themselves available. And so we missed all the deadlines. I don't know if a budget's gonna come out of that March 6th meeting. You know, from what I understand, that meeting, we're now going to go back to the budget that we had all worked on before. And those 2 members are now then going to ask for all of these changes to be made to it. But there's no explanation for the changes other than we want a different number. So it's gonna be a rough process there. Any other questions on that? We'll take up the appointments in camera. We've got some stuff to talk about there. 7:10, better news, the Manitoba Good Roads Association. They inform us there are some good roads in Manitoba. We have a resolution to go with it. We typically do support this, so I'll read the resolution. Be it resolved that the Council of the Swan Valley West approve payment of $250 to the Manitoba Good Roads Association for the 2024 membership. Is there someone who cares to move that? Councillor Burick, someone second? Councillor Kushniryk. The letter is attached from them along with the invoice for $250. When I look in the budget, it looks like we always budget for this, so certainly it's something we do most of the time. Does anyone have questions on this? There is, they note a couple courses, a gravel road maintenance and design in March, technology training in April. I don't know if Public Works will be interested in those, but they're available to us as members. Councillor Neely, don't choke on that.
No comment.
Any further discussion? Not, we'll call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. I don't have any correspondence on the list tonight, but I do have some unfinished business. Northwest Regional Immigrant Services, you'll recall we talked about this last time, and we sought some more information. So our question was what we donated last time. They don't see that we did necessarily last time. They were unable to find the documentation. So the thought here was we just didn't know how much. So what they share with us is they think the town is considering it. They're hoping for anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000 from us if we're willing to donate.
Did they say what they were exactly gonna use that for? That's another thing, because I feel like it was in the $250 range that we donated last time.
There wasn't a
Not the
lot.
1,000.
They had like sort of the budget from the last time, but
It was
Yeah.
44,000 or something for the whole. I think they put a cost per booth too, didn't they? It was fairly detailed. But it wouldn't say where our share went, it was just a pool I think it went into to pay for it.
so my
Other
hearing is
than that,
$250 is the suggestion.
Yeah, that's my suggestion.
That was on our last
Thank you.
meeting, right? We had that.
I feel like that's what, it hasn't been for a while, but I feel like that's what.
Our wonderful staff happens to have a copy of it here. Good job.
Hall rental and. can't remember.
They certainly do charge all those booths. 4,700 was spent on advertising. And then each of the booths cost, depending, the Philippines was expensive, was 1,700. Pop was $500, a pop booth.
But you
That
pay
was-
for those things. It's
Yeah.
not free. You know what I
What
mean?
was their
They're
income?
expensive. It's not a free event.
It was pretty close.
The total grants is 23,000, but almost all of that came from one place. There's an arts development grant for 1,000. There's very little here for other grants. Most all of the income came from running this thing by the look of it. Yeah. So we have a suggestion, I'll read the resolution. Be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of Swan West approve a grant of $250 to the Northwest Regional Immigrant Services, Inc. for the 2024 Folk Fest event. Is there someone that wishes to move that? Councillor Blosha, anyone wishes to second? Councillor Kushniryk. So we'll have some more discussion on that. The suggested amount by Councillor Blosha was $250. Does anyone want to change that amount, or are you happy with $250?
Well, 250 doesn't seem like very much.
Not very much nowadays, no?
I'm sure that's what we gave the last round.
That was 5 years ago.
Yeah, no, but that's what I'm just saying, I'm just going by what we gave.
I'll just watch you two go at it for a while. Go ahead.
We seldom do, so get the camera.
I know. It's
I'm not
good.
fighting with him about it.
No, we're just discussing.
Yeah.
Discussing.
What would you like to see it as, Councillor Neely?
Well, she's asking for anything like 1,000 to 3,000. So why don't we make it $1,000?
Councillor Blosha, how do you feel about $1,000? Feel like an auction here,
It's
we
not
have
a free,
$250 going to
like you
$1,000.
pay for the event, you pay for the things at the event. So I wanna know,
Yeah, we had done our last meeting, she had some kind of thing
The
there.
sheet is here, if you want to grab it and take a look. Councillor Burick, what's your thought?
I'd say 1,000 as well.
Don't they have to rent a hall?
250 is,
Over lots, but they also get lots of income.
it's in the,
There's-
it's in the curling rink.
And there's also a big grant.
What,
they
maybe
get
that
for
would
it,
be
too.
the Swan River's contribution, they give them the curling
No,
rink rental.
no, that's private, it's not the town. Town doesn't own the curling rink.
Not yet.
Well,
250.
Councillor
You're offering
Kushniryk.
up the reason.
Well, I'm not saying 250 is nothing, I think $1,000 is a little steep.
To
Oh,
me,
yeah,
I
that's
go.
1,000.
Cause then
Probably
you're,
higher.
cause we give our 4-H clubs and that, we don't
Do
give
you have
them
to call the people to pay
$1,000.
their tax
This
bills?
is a
and
one-time
then-
event.
Well, I just feel like if we're on share, we
44,000.
need more events, we need more stuff,
Terry,
they're harder to
We
do.
don't give our 4-H clubs
But I definitely say
$1,000.
yes to the 1,000.
it cost them $44,000.
Anyway, we don't give our 4-H clubs $1,000 a year, we give our 4-H clubs about 500. 500 is,
Could you live with 500?
I could live with 500, but I won't live
How's everybody else feel about 500?
Well, that's what I was gonna say originally. I went high so I could come down a little.
Oh, good, call here.
I was. And then I see she wanted 1,000 to 3,000. Well, with
Councillor Burick, you live with 500?
500.
If that's the way the majority I see it going, I guess I'll support that too, but I still say $1,000. 250 is very low, 500s.
You could purchase a few tickets yourself.
I could.
To make up that difference.
Yeah, not really. No, 500's fine, 1,000's fine, whatever.
What do you think, Brad?
If we're gonna settle on 5, I'll settle on 5, but I hate to side with Mr. Burick down here, but, but, these things are getting harder and harder to do and fewer people willing to do it. I don't know. When they run out of places they're willing to help, they'll just disappear too.
They do good work, settlement services.
But this is Folk Fest, this is totally different from settlement services.
It's run by them, but it's not.
I know it's run by them, but it's
There
not,
like to
it's
be
not
some-
settlement services,
Well,
Brian.
there could be some participation
Yeah,
from there, but.
yeah, exactly. I'm not saying it's not a good thing, I'm just saying. There's
Well,
a lot- there's a lot of
let's-
things we contribute to, and we gotta spread it out.
Well, we're gonna be split here right away, so we got two
Seems like
1,000.
500, no, 500
That's-
is 500.
Settlement services grant, but there's nothing.
I don't care.
Is there anything separate for this?
It's just a 250 was a little low, I thought.
And Lillian said that she couldn't find anything where.
I remember.
Municipalities didn't even ask.
It came as a
Last time.
separate donation other than settlement services.
I don't know, you don't know where it was, like it wasn't paid to settlement services, so it depends on where.
It was
paid
part of
to.
Folk Fest, I remember that.
Okay, so further information, so everybody hears it. We have never in 2018 paid a donation to settlement services for Folk Fest. But that doesn't mean that there wasn't a donation to something else that was running Folk Fest at the time. But Jillian also indicated that she could not find a donation from us in 2018, which is why we're not seeing it on the paper. And she couldn't find a donation from any municipality, and she believes they were never asked. So it could be some other part of it, like it could be one of the groups of Folk Fest asked and we gave the money to them. It might have been, something weird happened there, but it may not have been the main event that made the ask. You know, like it could well be that $250 went to the Ukrainian booth or something, but didn't go to Folk Fest proper. And we're not just seeing that in the computer for where it went to. So the moment I have 500 in the resolution, didn't think this would be the hard one to do tonight. Thought it might be, you know, the spending the $300,000 like earlier.
500,000, not a problem, 500,000.
Well, I'm just saying, because we gotta spread it out. There's asks all over.
Well, I'm good with 500 too. I don't wanna seem cheap, but
I do.
All right, so the resolution at the moment reads $500. Any further discussion? Those in favor? That's carried. Number 10, my favorite part of the evening, Mr. Kushniryk's as well. So much of this is his favorite that we will start with Councillor Kushniryk for his report tonight.
Well, we had the fire board, which we discussed. I've had LUD, which is again very basic. We discussed some of the curbside garbage and stuff like that. Some grant applications for splash pads. A couple of letters we need written, stuff like that. There was something sooner. Rise, we had Rise. You're gonna hear about that. And I think that's it.
Councillor Blosha.
I had no committee meetings, just some feedback on the garbage collection bins. Good feedback. And some calls about snow, and I think they've been resolved.
I thought maybe they're asking for more.
No, they're not. Well, we need more snow. We just don't want them on our roads.
just in the fields only.
Yeah, we need more snow. It's just.
Councillor Burick.
I had no committee meetings. Councillor Neely says there's one coming up on the 6th of 13th of March, or airport.
That's a
commission,
proposed
the
date.
proposal, okay. But I just want to make a comment. Councillor Blossom mentioned the dumpsters. The people in Bozeman are very happy. They're very happy with the new dumpsters. We got 5 of them there. Easy access to fill, lots of room. And the attendant, I spoke to the attendant there, and she says a lot of good remarks, good compliments. So it's working very well. I just want to make a comment also on that pamphlet that I received in the mail, Swan Valley West Update 2023. It was very well written. I met with a few people, I just got it I think on Friday, but a lot of people are really happy with that. They really like the information in it. They really look forward to reading it. They like the update. They like being informed. And like they said, if there's any questions from that, they knew what to ask. If they wanted to ask something, they could call a councillor, Reeve, or somebody to inquire. So it was really not my idea, but I mean, in the back of my mind, I had an idea like that to do myself. But somebody else beat me to it. Yeah. No, it was very good, very well put together.
Maybe to provide a little clarity to it, so it's not the council obviously that does that. That's something I've been doing, and I pay the entire bill for it, which is why you don't hear a lot about it at this table for the planning, and you certainly don't see a check for it. That's something that I kind of committed to do. Before the election, I said I would keep updating people, and so I have been doing that. There's some discussion before the meeting if council should be paying for it or not, and I just want to clarify, I'm not here looking for council to pay for it. That was something that I committed to doing, and I don't mind writing the check for it because I think it's important to keep people up to date on it. But that's also why you don't find you each getting to write your own stuff for it, because I'm paying for it myself. So if council wants to do an update like that, council would be more than willing to do that if you guys want to as a group. And then it would need to come here, and we would have to pay for it here, and it would have to be edited by all of us. But at the moment, that's why it comes out with, you know, it basically says my name and phone number. If you have questions about this, call me, because this is the stuff I'm saying. So.
Why don't you write it, we'll critique it and we'll pay it.
I feel,
And where am I gonna put the vote for Bill?
You out there for a while.
I feel that Swan Valley West should have been paying for that.
I disagree because Swan Valley West doesn't have the editorial content on it. You know, Swan Valley West doesn't ultimately choose what's in that book. And sometimes you see some RISE stuff, you see some library stuff in there, you know, it's the different committees I'm on, and, you know, sometimes the library's like, okay, you say this, and tell people, okay, well, I'll put it in a book then. Next time we do a book, we'll put something in there about the library, this time was about the magazines, right? Come see the magazines. So I didn't feel fair even discussing it at council because, you know, I did it before the election, I did it during the election, it was very definitely a political thing from the politician side of the job, which is go get elected next time. You know, to me, it's not a council thing because it's so pushed to, hey, this guy might want to run for that job again someday. If council wants to do an update, I'm not saying I wouldn't still do one separately at a different time. If council wants to do it, there's nothing stopping council from doing one. Just be aware of the cost, it ain't cheap. Like it fits within our rules for the election, but it's the only thing that fits in the rules besides a few signs. And that's only because I happen to own the printer and own the bulk ink and own the everything. For council to haul off and do that on our photocopier would be insane cost compared to if you have the printing press sitting there that you can just use for it. So. And I can't sell you the service because then I'd be in conflict.
You just have to leave the room.
No, you want the printing service.
No, you just have to leave the room.
I've seen the folding machine, we don't have one, we don't want this.
Anyway, Councillor Neely, your turn.
No committee meetings. I agree with Brian, that was quite an informative little pamphlet that went out. I think I haven't really talked to anybody about it, but I'm sure people appreciate it, knowing what's being updated on what's going on. It was just bare facts in there, so I mean, can't argue with them, you know, like it's, yeah.
I do
And,
intend to, like as we do the splash park, what I intend to contribute to the splash park is a similar thing that's just about the splash park, asking for donations. You know, that explains how the splash park works, and pictures
Yeah,
of
well,
it.
it's
Please
a
donate.
10% has to be private donation, and so people understand, that's what I'm getting at, these little things that people wouldn't know, you know.
We also had in there the development of the Benito too, those,
Yeah,
that area there.
Northview, North.
Yeah, you know,
North.
people didn't know anything, probably didn't know about
I
it.
did actually have one call already from someone that was wondering if they could buy 10 lots if they agreed to build 10 houses there.
See?
Which we wouldn't have got the call if that wasn't.
You know when that started, back about 1992.
Anything else, Councillor Neely?
No,
I
that's
think you were
it.
done.
I said enough tonight then.
Okay, so just for the record, I am not texting any of the members of council. What I have on here is a list of what I've done. So I know that will come up, so let's just address it and we don't have to worry about it. I did attend the library board meeting. We've discussed that fairly to death already. On the 20th of February, we held a senior staff meeting. It's the first time we've ever done that. So we had Pat and Lois and Scott and I, we sat here for a little over 2 hours, and we went through a bunch of things that are happening in the municipality. The idea was to get all the various arms of the municipality aware of what each other is doing. So Scott knows how budgeting is working and when our dates are, we have to have done, because some of that impacts him. Meanwhile, some of the stuff that Scott's doing impacts what Lois is doing, impacts Pat. So it was basically a sharing session. I think we found it quite useful to go through a bunch of stuff and just, we always talk about it, but I'll see Pat one day and I might see Scott 2 days later and I might see Lois the third day. Whereas to actually sit down in the room and talk was really good. So we've decided we're gonna do it again in a month and just go through another laundry list of things. And I think we had 12 or 15 things that day. And we just spent a few minutes on each one. Let's make sure everybody's on the same page, knowing how this stuff works. And then if, you know, it shows up, somebody gets asked about it, they know what's happening. So it was really good. I spent some time with Councillor White and his medical recruitment because he had a bunch of Councillor White requests. Fire board as well. We did tender opening the one day, that was pretty short. We had one person attend the tender opening to see what we were up to there. I went to a rural Manitoba immigrant meeting, so that was a mix between my role in settlement services on the board there, but also probably more so in the economic development world. So we had the folks here from Brandon. They were doing a traveling road show. And it was a day-long thing. I only went to the afternoon because the morning was more for employers that are looking to employ temporary foreign workers. But in the afternoon, we were discussing things like how to make our community more welcoming to newcomers, how to get people to stay here, and even how to encourage people to come. And so we heard from the people who were presenting were newcomers. They didn't come from Canada, they're here from other places. So they were telling some stories about the differences. And as one example, here we offer job services. You can go to the government job bank, you can go to a bunch of places that tell you about jobs that are available. And they said, where they come from, all those things exist, but you pay. There's no such thing as going and getting free job information. So they say a lot of newcomers won't use those services because their assumption is, if I go there and they help me find a job, I will owe them $500. And so because of that, they don't go. And so they're trying to just underscore some of these things that are so different from one country to the next, and then how clear you have to be. Jillian was there, and she spoke about some of the differences in the ads for employees, how we know what we mean when we put an ad in the newspaper, but a newcomer may not read that the same. Their frame of reference is different. Some of our abbreviations, even just what we talk about in the job titles are different. And so they were speaking about how to be more clear. Jillian was also saying where she's from, which is the UK. If there was a job advertisement, the first thing you would do would be go down there and they'd walk you through the office and show you what you do before you ever put a resume in, as something to help you understand and see if you want to do it. She says here, when she runs an ad, she's never had one person come yet. Just the resume gets dropped off, and she's shocked that no one comes in. But she says, if you're talking to people from the UK, they would expect to come and look around first before they ever decide if they're applying or not. And so again, just a regional difference. The gentleman that was presenting, his name was Enver, like Denver, but with no D. He's lived in 4 different countries, a bunch of different places. He now lives in rural Manitoba, and he says that's it for him. He's never going back to a city again. He can't believe he did so much city life. He did some time in Toronto, he did some other cities, but he says he likes the rural. If he'd known, he would have come here first. And he was underscoring that lots of times we think, oh, we're in the middle of nowhere, no one wants to be here. Well, he says he's as happy as could be in rural Manitoba, if only he had known sooner. The other interesting thing he pointed out was that he says, you get in your mind that you need to advertise to these foreign countries and then find people spotted a program and get them to come here. He says, you're nuts. Do you know how many immigrants are here already that are permanent residents? Advertise within Canada. Talk to people in Toronto, talk to people in Vancouver, say, here's this other lifestyle we have. And he says, let's be frank, they've already ripped up their entire life they had and moved to a different country. What's moving to a different province to them now? They're already the people that are willing to move. Focus a lot more time in Canada at looking for people that might want to come here and be part of what we have. He was fairly impressed with what we have in the valley. As far as services and opportunities here, he thought it was a very nice place. So they'll do some more stuff going forward. This is part of a new government program they have going to do these things. But certainly there was some eye-opening stuff there for what we do with RISE, especially as we're putting together this new business opportunity guide. Some of the stuff he was saying will be a couple changes we'll make in there to try and make it a little easier for people that maybe aren't from here and might have a business to understand. I attended a photo op for the medical recruitment healthcare aid packages. We gave those out. So 121 packages were distributed. Each package has a value of $400. So that's around $50,000 of those packages. More to the Swan Valley West point of view, $30,000 of that is payable to the Thunder Hill Ski Club if those are redeemed. So it essentially becomes a grant to Thunder Hill if new people go there and look at it, which was part of the planning process for this, was rather than just handing somebody $100 and they might go spend it on Amazon or they might go to Yorkton and buy supper, we would show them things we have in the valley, and that money would end up supporting those things in the valley and making our valley a better place. So Thunder Hill is the most notable one, but there's also the pool and bowling in that package. We've heard from some healthcare aides, and there was a letter that came. Nobody else has a copy of that letter here, I don't think. No. Stock's letter? Do you have it?
Well, it's in my emails.
Can you pull it up while I talk? There's a letter that came that I think should be shared with council. I forgot to put it on the agenda, but Councillor Kushniryk has a copy. I'll pull it up here and I'll read it to you. They're very appreciative anyway. I attended the high school and did the photos for the business opportunity guide. I don't know if you ever heard me complain about the first round of photos, but the second round is much better. So that's part of RISE's goal to promote the school division, with that edge to, you should come live here because your kids will have a better school experience here. So we're working on that. And that brings me back to, no, it doesn't quite yet. There was a chamber meeting in there as well. The discussion has been primarily lately on the patrol vehicle and the camera system. So I can share that the $50,000 from the RCMP has made its way through the chamber now. So a full $90,000 has been contributed to the camera project, which a little over half is spent on hardware. Installations are ongoing. The patrol vehicle was finished a couple days ago. It now has its light bar on it. So it's a 100-watt LED light bar. It's pretty bright and certainly can scare you away from a dumpster if it needs to. So things are well there. This is the letter. So this is from Brandon Stock. I'll just read it to council because it's not on the agenda. Good evening. I would like to say a few words from the extremely appreciative generosity that was shared today from the G4 Medical Recruitment Committee. I was absolutely floored by what was inside the packages presented today. I looked through one when I returned to my office with them to package up for distribution. Not only was I not expecting what was inside the packages, but I believe those receiving them will be even more shocked. I have worked with healthcare aides for 14 years and was one for a year. I have seen numerous healthcare aides do 16-hour shifts on a daily basis to earn extra income to be able to pay bills and fund activities for their families. These Explorer passes provided today, in my opinion, are the biggest thank you that they have ever received. I say thank you as much as I can to my healthcare aides, but this recognition is amazing for our local healthcare aid staff. In the past, the focus was normally on nurses and doctors for recognition, and those in support services are always forgotten. Without the backbone of our healthcare system, we wouldn't be installing a CT scanner right now or looking at other advancements in the coming years. Those in areas such as housekeeping, nutrition services, health information services, and maintenance are the actual backbones to our health facilities. Without them, we wouldn't be open. On behalf of the healthcare aides within the valley that received recognition today, thank you, Brandon Stock, RN. So, certainly it would appear that the packages were a good idea. And just to recap, due to the interest rates and such, it was the interest earned in 2023 on the funds that was used for those healthcare packages. So it wasn't actual municipal dollars that were expended over top of just the interest income. There probably will be some municipal dollars expended later on as more is done, but I believe that is everything I have to share tonight, or at least a good chunk of it. Questions for anybody, comments? It's our chance to visit. There's a moment if there's anything you have on your mind to talk about.
What are you doing in your spare time?
Sleeping. I'm young enough right now to do this.
I have
And it's-
meetings every night.
At some point, I won't be young enough to do this anymore, and then it's somebody else's turn. But right now, I'm having fun.
None of us.
Okay, that concludes. Oh, do you have anything you want to share? You're not on the list, but you should be.
The one thing that came to mind when you were talking about this Enver and how he appreciates the rural setting. I heard a story a while ago that sort of impressed me, and it was a minister's convention or get-together going on down in Brandon. And so somebody from the valley here encountered this person that was at this convention and got talking to him and stuff, and apparently this guy that he was talking to was not employed, and he was looking for a church to pastor. And so the guy from the valley said, well, you know what, there's a couple of churches in Swan Valley that's looking for a pastor. Why don't you come up and have a look for yourself? And so he said, it's only 3.5 hours, like you got nothing else to do, come on up. So this fellow took him up on it. You know, he was invited to stay at the other pastor's home when he came up here, and so he took him up on it, and he came up, and it happened to be in September, beautiful, beautiful time of the year. when all the leaves are all colorful and everything. Anyways, this fellow said that by the time he reached Swan River, in his mind, he'd already been sold on the idea and he was gonna stay in the valley because he fell in love with it. He likes hunting and fishing and stuff, and he could see all the potential and stuff. So it just impressed on me how a word, a little encouragement or something like that, we take for granted what we have,
yeah.
and we don't appreciate how it might look to somebody new through their eyes, and how impressive it might be. And it's sort of the same thing that you're saying, Ms. Enver was saying. So not having been born and raised in the valley, I can attest to that. Like, it is the most beautiful. And I've lived everywhere from BC to New Brunswick, so I've seen some country. But what we have right here is absolutely beautiful, and we should not be ashamed to promote it. So anyways, that was just a little add-on there.
All right. If there's nothing else, we will adjourn the meeting for about 10 minutes. When we come back, we will be going in camera. Tonight in camera, we'll be discussing HR matters, bylaw enforcement, and further discussion on library board appointments. We are adjourned. So coming back to the meeting, we're going to number 11.1 in camera. Be it resolved that pursuant to section 1523, the Municipal Act Council shall meet as a committee of the whole. Close the meeting and continue discussions in camera regarding personnel matters, negotiations, preliminary discussions, unresolved legal matters, and investigation or enforcement of an act or bylaw. Is there a mover? Councillor Burick, and second by Councillor Kushniryk. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. During the in-camera session, we'll go to 11.3, resolutions arising from in-camera discussions. I'm not aware of any, but does anybody else have one to present tonight? Hearing nothing. Number 12, notice of motion. Does anyone have a notice of motion to present? Still hearing nothing, we'll move to number 13. Be it resolved, this meeting shall now adjourn at 9:54 p.m. Be it further resolved, the next meeting is Tuesday, March 12th, 2024 at 7 p.m. Moved by
Terry.
Councillor
Second
Neely,
by Carrie.
seconded by Councillor
And
Blosha.
Brad, and Brian's just smiling.
Any
Very
further
shaking his
discussion?
head.
I remember we used to have meetings till 1, 2 in the morning.
Oh, God,
Carried.
yeah, I know.
1, 2.